In this video, I'm going to beat Pokemon FireRed with only the Dewgong-line. Yes, the Dewgong-line. I am going to be using Seel today for the second time on my channel, and if you are not a regular viewer, you will not know that Seel is my least favorite Pokemon, not only because of its uncreative name, but this thing was terrible to use in Yellow version, and that really put me off of it. That said, I haven't used Dewgong on the channel before, and I'm actually really excited to use this Pokemon, because while its name is also similarly uncreative, if you didn't know, there is an animal called the Dewgong, and yeah, this is the animal. Anyways, I actually like the design. It's kind of cute, and for a fully evolved Pokemon with the Ice type, I think it's gonna do decently well, so let's see. For base stats, Seel has 65 HP, 45 attack, speed, and special attack, 55 defense, and 70 special defense. It has a medium fast growth rate, which is just okay, kind of middle of the road. Its ability is Thick Fat. Hydration is introduced in Generation 4, so I didn't even have that as an option. Like in Generation 1, its move pool is pretty limited in the early game. It starts with Headbutt, then gets Growl at level 9, and it takes all the way until level 17 to get access to Icy Wind. Pretty unfortunate that it doesn't get access to a Water type move early on, and unlike in Generation 1, there is no Water Gun TM in Mount Moon, so I'm gonna have to wait quite a while to get a same type attack bonus move. Because through level up it gets Aurora Beam, Rest, Takedown, Ice Beam, and Safeguard. Yes, this thing learns no Water type moves naturally, although through TM and HM it does get access to some of these moves, Water Pulse after Misty, and then Surf once I reach the Safari Zone. Of course, it can learn Waterfall and Dive, but those aren't going to be relevant for this run. In terms of coverage, it really only gets Ice moves and normal type moves, so I'm pretty limited in my options. I think its final moveset will probably look something like Ice Beam, Surf, Return, and Substitute. But that's really getting ahead of myself. First, let's figure out how to defeat Brock. On Route 1, I do a decent amount of training, taking Seel up to level 9 so that I can fight the rival on Route 22 for additional experience. Then in Viridian Forest, I battle all of the trainers as well as a bunch of wild Pokemon, leveling up eventually to 15. Now, there might have been the option to face Brock at this level, but it didn't really feel that safe to me, so I decided to continue my training 2 more levels up to 17 to learn Icy Wind. This takes quite a while, a total of 17.5 minutes before I'm finally ready to face Brock. His rock types don't resist Icy Wind because the rock type does not resist ice type moves, and the ground type takes super effective damage from it. Seel is able to one-shot the Geodude, move on to the Onix, barely fail to get the one hit, but Rock Tomb doesn't do very much because Seel is not an ice type. As a result, I take a very easy victory over the first gym leader, although it did take a long time. The Boulder Badge gives me a 10% boost to my attack stat, which can be useful for Headbutt's damage in the early game. Just before Mount Moon, I pick up the Person Berry, but in retrospect, I don't think this item is super relevant for Seel because Misty isn't going to be choosing Water Pulse against me. Once I enter the cave, I go a little bit out of my way to grab the TM for Thief because Seel can learn this move and it's a great way to counter out Misty's Starmie. I do a little bit of additional training, for example beating Hiker Marcos, and then once I beat the Super Nerd, the fossil guy, I level up to 21, and this allows Seel to learn Aurora Beam, which is just a better ice type move when compared with Icy Wind. Okay, so heading into Cerulean City, I have a choice to make. Do I face the rival or do I go up against Misty right away? The former is probably an easier fight, but the latter gives me access to Water Pulse for all of Nugget Bridge. So in this case, I decide to try my luck against the Water type specialist. Up first is Staryu. It is faster than Seel, and despite what I thought before, it is choosing Water Pulse, which means the AI sees that this move does more damage even though it's resisted. Staryu takes 2 turns to knock out. I move on to the Starmie after that, and it's choosing Swift unlike the Staryu. Plus Thief really isn't doing very much damage, and as a result, the Starmie finishes Seel off and I take my first reset. It looks like I made the wrong choice. Instead, I'm going to face the rival and get some more experience to make Misty easier. His team is quite bad against Seel because Aurora Beam is super effective against the Pidgeotto, but of course the bird still survives and uses Sand Attack. Beyond that though, there's not going to be that many threats. I gave the rival Bulbasaur, and you might wonder why, because isn't it weak to ice type moves? And yeah, but the rival doesn't really have a team that would be more difficult. Like I could have fought the Blastoise team where he resists my attacks, but that didn't really feel thematic. Generally I like to pair it up like the developers would have, and I think in this case they would have put Bulbasaur up against Seel just because because Seal is a water type. In the end, I said this battle was not going to be a problem, and it isn't, but the Rattata does make things pretty close, taking Seal down to red health before I finish it off. With the rival finished, I fight one additional trainer on Route 25 to gain access to secret power. Honestly, this move isn't very useful though. I think I should have skipped it because Headbutt is roughly equivalent. At the very end of Route 25, I defeat the final last, who has 2 grass type Pokemon, but they're basically irrelevant because I have coverage with ice type moves. By the way, I have run out of Aurora Beam, so this is why I didn't delete Icy Wind, because I want more PP. Okay, so Seal is now a higher level, and I think it's going to be able to defeat Misty. I outspeed the Staryu. While Headbutt does not get the one hit, it causes a flinch, so I knock the Staryu out for free after Misty uses one of her super potions. The Starmie Swifts are doing a lot less damage, and Thief is doing more, so this time I am able to crush her and earn myself the Water Pulse TM, which I teach right away in the place of Icy Wind. And speaking of water, we are now going to go out onto the SS Anne and grab some useful items. Here are the Rest TM, which is technically optional, and Seal can learn this move through level up, but the move reminder is on the Sevi Islands, and I don't want to go there before I defeat the champion for the first time. Picking this up right now gives me a little bit more moveset flexibility throughout the rest of the playthrough. Okay, time for the rival again. Let's see if he continues to not be a threat. Well, the Pidgeotto is consistently a nuisance because it does survive again, luckily not using Sand Attack this time. Ivysaur's next. Of course, Aurora Beam is the correct choice. It does more than half, but then the grass type puts me to sleep, and Seal sleeps way too long, getting taken all the way down to 9 hit points before it wakes up and strikes back with Aurora Beam. I thought that this was going to be a loss because the Raticate has Quick Attack, but it doesn't use the priority move, instead choosing Hyper Fang, but because it survives Water Pulse, it still gets to attack and Seal faints. I went into the fight a little bit too quickly. I should have equipped the Chesto Berry in the place of the Person Berry so that I could wake up from sleep powder if the Ivysaur uses it, but this time it just misses with poison powder anyway, and I knock it out for free. After that, I can 2-shot the Raticate, Kadabra misses Disable, and I 1-shot it with Headbutt. Wow, I don't 1-shot it. Seal's attack is like just slightly too low to be getting convenient 1-hits in this section of the game. Luckily for me, the Kadabra just goes for another failed Disable, and I knock it out. In Generation 3, there's one mandatory trainer before facing Surge, and his Pikachu has Static, which causes the status condition for Seal. I do defeat him, and I have a chance to learn Rest here, which I say no to, at least for now in the playthrough. I don't think healing moves are very good early on. They're much better later on into the playthrough when the opponent's teams are like 4 to 6 Pokemon and you need enough health to last. Due to the status condition, I have to backtrack to the Vermilion City Pokemon Center, which is just a small nuisance because I can't use Diglett's Tunnel to dig back to Cerulean City in this game anyway. Okay, heading back to the gym. Now let's face Surge. I think that Seal can do it. After all, Surge is pretty bad. His first Pokemon's Voltorb, and it's speed tied with Seal. He wins the tie using Shockwave first, doing about a quarter, and then Water Pulse causes confusion. Because he uses a Super Potion and I win the following speed tie, Seal knocks the Voltorb out and moves on to the Pikachu. I have a Cherry Berry in case Static activates, so I go for Headbutt. It does not activate, so I still have my item left for the Raichu. This thing loves to use Double Team. Headbutt is doing less than half, which is a bit concerning, and then when he starts using Shockwave, it's dealing massive damage. It's not enough for Seal to survive hits, so the Raichu finishes me off. I'm able to make it back here in the next fight, but I wasn't sure what move to choose. Is Water Pulse going to do more damage? And the answer is no. Because I'm not able to 2-hit Surge's Ace, once again it finishes me with Shockwave. Okay, I think I have to skip Surge, and I think that is a all-time first in FireRed. I think this is the best choice because Seal is going to evolve into Dewgong at level 34, and that's just right around the corner. Some additional experience and then backtracking later to take on the Electric-type specialist will make things more consistent and ensure that I don't waste additional time. Although my ego is a little bit bruised, Surge is supposed to be bad, as I said before. But I'm playing with Seal, so what did I expect? When Seal evolves from Dewgong, its base stat total goes from 325 up to 475. It's really easy to remember how its base stats increase because they all go up by 25. It also gains the ice type, meaning moves like Aurora Beam are now going to have the same type attack bonus. I have to say that's going to be really nice because using Aurora Beam against Picnicker Martha's Oddish, I just barely don't have enough damage and it puts me to sleep. Luckily, this Oddish is pretty bad and it just spams Sweet Scent as I snooze. Seal wakes up and knocks it out. The Bulbasaur Bulbasaur that follows, while it does have a higher special defense, it looks like I roll better damage because I do knock it out in one hit. Okay, so that's it for Rock Tunnel. Leaving this area, I'm level 32, and I'm going to head south of Lavender Town to pick up the TM for return. On my way to Celadon City, I cut this tree and pick up some berries in this grass patch. I didn't know these existed before, but they're quite good, so thank you Exceptional for letting me know that they exist. In the rocket hideout, just before Giovanni, I fight the 2 rockets guarding his area. This gives me an opportunity to talk about Intimidate. Luckily for Seal, it is not going to be using many physical attacks, so Intimidate users aren't going to cause it too many headaches. Plus, in this battle, I level up to 34, and now my Seal evolves into a Dewgong. So that is good riddance to the uncreative first stage Pokemon, and hello to the uncreative second stage Pokemon, but Dewgong, your aesthetic, it's much better. Interestingly enough, this evolution brings with it some small changes to my move pool. I can learn Signal Beam if I go to the move reminder, which is interesting, but it also means that moves like Ice Beam are going to be learned through level up at a higher level now. Instead of 41, it's 51. I don't get access to any other additional coverage through TM and HM, so now let's take on Giovanni. This battle is quite simple with access to Water Pulse. Also, I just want to say I really like this Dewgong back sprite. You can see its little fang and its eye. I think they've balanced everything out really well. The only Pokemon on Giovanni's team that ever causes problems is the Kangaskhan, and I'm not able to do that much damage to it, but in this case, it's just setting up with Tail Whip. It takes too long before using Mega Punch, and I finish it with Aurora Beam. As an Ice type, I think it makes most sense to face Erika next. I know that I'm weak to her moves due to my water typing, but I'll probably just put out enough damage using Aurora Beam. Before that, I grab the coin case. I'm going to use this to buy the Ice Beam TM later on, and then I head into the grass type gym. Just so everyone's aware, this was the first project that Exceptional and I worked on together. I know that we started working together in the summer. Yes, we were making this video in June, but I always planned to release it in November because it's an Ice type, and Ice type is basically the theme in Canada during November. I'm bringing him up right now though because I want to talk about the EV training in Erika's gym. If you fight the Bellsprout line, then you get attack EVs, but if you fight the Bulbasaur and the Oddish line, then you get special attack EVs. So defeating the trainers on the left-hand side of the gym is better for Pokemon with physical moves, and defeating the trainers on the right-hand side of the gym is better for Pokemon with special moves. During my playthroughs, I haven't really been thinking about this as an option, so I'm glad that Exceptional was able to give me this little tip. For future playthroughs, I think it's going to come in handy. In this case, I just fight Mary because she gives really good experience yields, and with her out of the way at level 35, my Dewgong is ready to face Erika. The question in my mind is, will Aurora Beam one-shot all of her Pokemon? If it's not going to, then I'm technically going to take a lot of damage, and potentially the Vileplume could put me to sleep with Sleep Powder. The Ice-type move gets the job done against the Victory Bell. That's a good start. Next is Tangela. It's at a much lower level, so I can also finish it off in a single hit. But the Vileplume is the most bulky Pokemon on her team. That said, Aurora Beam still does enough damage, and I take an easy victory over the Grass-type Specialist. With her out of the way, I'm going to backtrack through the middle of the map because I do have to face Surge. I assume this fight's going to be pretty easy, so let's put on some silly music because Dewgong's very over-leveled at this point. Voltorb's first, Aurora Beam one-shots. Pikachu's next, Aurora Beam continues its spree. Raichu comes out to go for Water Pulse in case I get a secondary status, but I don't, and the Raichu does, inflicting paralysis. Then it starts setting up Double Team, and I'm paralyzed so many times in a row. It was genuinely extremely frustrating. I think I got a little overconfident here and should have come into this battle with a Cherry Berry. Without it, I take a loss against Surge. Okay, so I'm going to give the Cherry Berry to Dewgong, and then in the follow-up battle when the Raichu paralyzes me, I just cure the status condition immediately, go for a second Water Pulse, and knock his ace out. Ever since evolving, Dewgong's been feeling really good to use, and it continues to be that way against the rival in Pokemon Tower. I'll just quickly address the fact that I don't have Ice Beam yet. You might have thought that I would buy this from the game corner as soon as I would arrive in Celadon City, but it costs a total of 4,000 coins, and I don't have the money yet to afford it. That's 80,000 Pokedollars. And when I'm buying things like Repels and Super Repels to avoid wild Pokemon throughout my solo challenges, I'm just never going to have it when I first arrive in the mid-game. I typically find in these playthroughs that I can buy it sometime around when I'm facing Blaine, and that is if I'm intentionally collecting items that I can sell later on. Okay, getting back to the rival battle, he's not difficult at all. I finish off his last Pokemon, one, and now I'm going to go to Cycling Road. Here, I grab the one hidden rare candy, do a bit of additional training, raising Dewgong to level 40, and upon arriving in Fuchsia City, I use the move tutor to teach Dewgong Substitute in the place of Thief. In the Safari Zone, I pick up the Quick Claw. This is just a mistake, either here picking it up, or the fact that I just don't use it for the rest of the playthrough. Dewgong didn't need this. At the end of the Safari Zone, I teach Dewgong Surf in the place of Water Pulse, upgrading its effective power from 90 to 142. With that, I'm ready to take on my next gym leader, so let's face Koga. This fight is extremely straightforward in most playthroughs. Set up Substitute on the first turn, then he's not able to hit you with Smokescreen or inflict poison. The only thing that ever seems to mess me up here is if the Muck is able to set up Minimize enough and he uses his Hyper Potion on it, healing it, giving it more time in battle to consistently break my Substitute. In this case, Dewgong's damage range is perfect because it 3 hits the Muck, and that does not trigger him to use his Hyper Potion. As a result, I'm able to sweep through his following Coughing and Wheezing with ease and earn myself the Soul Badge. I obtained the TM for Blizzard in Pokemon Mansion, but this move has fallen from grace since its Generation 1 days. With 70% accuracy, it's just not that useful in Generation 3. The only reason I'm picking it up is because maybe I need more money to buy Ice Beam, and it also might be useful later on if I really need a tiny bit more damage for some incredibly difficult fight. I would prefer to avoid getting myself in that position, so I do some additional training inside of Blaine's gym against all of the Fire-type specialists here. With them out of the way, it's time for another gym battle, and I'm hoping that I can earn myself the special attack boost as easily as possible. Blaine leads with Growlithe, Intimidate is irrelevant, and Surf 1 hits. Ponyta's next. I took a gamble here and set up Substitute. It ends up working because Fire Blast does not break my defense, and then I can one-shot with Surf. Rapidash comes in next, Surf continues its spree, getting a 1-hit, and then Arcanine comes out. This is where my Substitute matters, because it survives a single Surf. This allows it to attack once with Fire Blast, but Substitute blocks it, and then Blaine gets locked in a Hyper Potion loop, and I eventually defeat him. I'm really glad my Ice type didn't put me at a significant disadvantage there. Now let's head back to Celadon City, because I have a lot of selling to do. After getting rid of some vitamins, which I didn't want to use, as well as some TMs, I have exactly 100,000 Pokedollars, so I'm going to exchange this for coins in the game corner. The reason I wanted 5,000 coins instead of 4,000 is because I'm going to be purchasing 2 items here. First, the TM for Ice Beam, and then second, the Mystic Water to improve Surf's damage. With these items, I head to Silph, but I am holding on to Ice Beam. I'm not going to teach it now, just in case I need moveset flexibility later on. By the way, this is just objectively a mistake. I should have just taught it right away. But I'm saying that with the advantage of hindsight, having seen the rest of the playthrough. In Silph, I level up to 50, and then I take on the rival. Pidgeot's first, I establish Substitute, tank a Wing Attack, and then knock it out with Aurora Beam. It's good this Ice-type move still has enough damage. Next is Venusaur, and it's going to do enough to 2-hit, plus the Venusaur completely fizzles with its turn, just going for Sleep Powder, doing absolutely nothing. Gyarados is next. I get a lucky critical hit, but it's still not enough to get the one-shot. But then the Water type just uses Leer, again doing nothing. So yeah, the rival is essentially a clean sweep. It's so simple to get through his team. With him out of the way, there's one more mandatory trainer before Giovanni. His first Pokemon Cubone gives me enough experience to get to level 51, and this is where I learn Ice Beam in the place of Aurora Beam. With it, I just smash Giovanni. He is so simple for a Water Ice type to manage. And then, without backtracking, I head to Sabrina. Dewgong has a lot of special defense, so I don't think this fight is going to be particularly difficult. Also, the Kadabra loves setting up with Calm Mind on the first turn, or Reflect. That gives me time to establish Substitute before knocking it out. Mr. Mime sets up Barrier. She uses a Hyper Potion twice on it, delaying me from knocking it out. By the way, I do have the damage range sometimes to get the 1-hit, so this was just unlucky. Next is Venomoth. It's a little bit scary because it's a fighting grass type, but in this case, Surf does enough damage and I one-shot. Last is Alakazam. Here, I go for Surf. It doesn't get the 1-hit, but her powerful Psychic type just chooses Future Sight and I knock it out. It's a little bit weird to reflect on the fact that since I have evolved, the only trainer who has caused me to have a reset is Surge. Like, is that actually what's happening in this playthrough? Anyways, let's move on. In Giovanni's gym, I absolutely crush Warren, who is usually the difficult trainer here, but his ground types and the one poison type Nidorina are just not matched rematches for Dewgong. And in most cases, Warren is actually more difficult than Giovanni, at least that's what I found in my playthroughs. So once again, I just crush a bunch of ground-type Pokemon and earn myself the 8th and final badge. Okay, I'm starting to think that Dewgong would be an excellent Pokemon to solo run the entire game with, because it starts with Aurora Beam, so it has an answer to Brock right away. Because of that, it's going to fare a lot better than Seal in the early game, and with Headbutt and higher stats, it's likely going to be able to defeat Misty early on and earn Water Pulse before Nugget Bridge, giving it an increase in its already good momentum. Plus, it could probably defeat Surge as long as the player remembers their Cherry Berry. That left me wondering, what is its next major hurdle going to be? The rifle on Route 22 often is really difficult, but I'm reminded of something Exceptional said to me about his team, especially when he chooses Venusaur as his starter. In the early game, it tends to be the case that his Bulbasaur and then later Ivysaur are quite difficult to get by. Sleep Powder and Vine Whip do a lot of damage if they're super effective. But once he evolves into Venusaur, his moveset just really deteriorates, and your moves get better, plus you have Substitute to block a lot of the status conditions, and yeah, I think his Venusaur team is definitely the worst team of the three. Maybe that's not the case if you have a physical attacker, because both Gyarados and Growlithe have Intimidate, but Venusaur is just such an incompetent ace that he isn't difficult once again. Dewgong defeats all of his Pokemon with relative ease, not even losing its Substitute. Okay, so Victory Road, I'm going to do some additional training. This takes Dewgong up to level 58. I head into Indigo Plateau, and then I realized that I had forgotten one rare candy. This is the one back in the Warden's house, so I backtrack there, pick up the rare candy, and then I use 7 of them to take Dewgong up from level 58 to 65 before I start the Elite Four. If there's going to be a trainer that walls Dewgong, it's most likely going to be Lorelei. She resists most of my attacks, so Dewgong is relying on Headbutt here. Her Dewgong also is going to take 4 hits to knock out, so she uses a full restore before I take it down, and as a result I have to spend 7 turns knocking it out. The Cloyster, which is more defensive, has terrible special defense, so even with resisted damage, Surf is able to 2-hit. I do think that was because I had the Mystic Water. It probably would have survived on a sliver of health if I didn't have my held item. Okay, things are looking up here. Next is Slowbro, and Substitute is able to block Yawn. I reestablish it, knock out the Slowbro, and move on to the Jinx. This thing is sometimes annoying because of Lovely Kiss and Attract, but in this case I just 2-shot with Headbutt and I don't lose my sub before the Lapras. But her final Pokemon is quite defensive, and it's taking very little damage from each one of my Headbutts. It breaks my Substitute, I reestablish it, continue using Headbutt, I lose another Substitute, Lapras eats its Citrus Berry, and then I was left with a difficult choice. Do I reestablish my Substitute and then get knocked out right after it breaks, or do I just try to go for it? I made the offensive choice to just attack, and this ended up being the wrong call because Lapras inflicts a status condition with Body Slam, and once again, due to paralysis, I take a reset. So, Surge and Lorelei both got me with this status condition. I can increase Dewgong's damage just slightly for this fight by using my 4 remaining rare candies to go up to level 69, and then I teach Return in the place of Headbutt so that I have additional damage against all her water types. This makes the fight so much easier. Against the Lapras, you can see that I'm doing significantly more damage this time, and as a result, even as it gets annoying breaking my Substitute with Body Slam, I'm able to take it out and earn my first victory in the league. Technically, fighting type Pokemon are super effective against ice types, but Bruno also has Onix, which is just terrible. Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee both have good special defenses, so the first of them survives Surf and goes for Rock Tomb, which would have been annoying if it lowered my speed, but it just misses instead because that move is terrible. Next is Hitmonlee. I'm using Return now because they have lower physical defense. It goes for Brick Break, it does a third, and then after a full restore, I knock the fighting type out. Next, Bruno chooses Machamp. This is the Pokemon I'm most worried for because it has Cross Chop, a move with a high critical hit ratio. But like Rock Tomb, it has 80% accuracy, so it just misses, and after a Citrus Berry, I finish Bruno's ace off. Well, his last Pokemon's Onix, but definitely not his ace. So let's move on to Agatha. Substitute negates so many of her tactics, like Toxic, as well as Confuse Ray, and Hypnosis. Because of that, she's not really a threat to Dewgong, and Surf is dealing enough damage to 2-shot most of her Pokemon. So yeah, this fight's easy. Let's move on to Lance, and he is going to continue to be easy for Dewgong, because of course I have Ice Beam. I take my time here setting up Substitute against the Gyarados, just so I can tank a hit from the Aerodactyl, because it is faster than Dewgong, and only by 2 speed. That said, if I just tank 1 ancient power, I can use Surf to knock it out in a single hit, and from there his remaining dragons all take super effective damage from Ice Beam, and they're all slower than Dewgong, so I one-hit all 3 of them, and with that I'm ready for the champion. As this fight starts, let's check in with the clock. It's around 1 hour and 17 minutes. Dewgong is getting a great time so far, despite the time disadvantage it had at the beginning of the game, starting as a seal. I establish Substitute on the Pidgeot, use Ice Beam to one-shot it, and Surf to take out the following Rhydon. From here, things get a little bit more difficult, at least theoretically. Venusaur is next, and it does use Sunny Day, cutting Surf's power, which is unfortunate. That said, Ice Beam gets the easy 2-shot, and then Alakazam comes in. I'm going to be using physical moves for it, so I go for Return. Interestingly, it survives and breaks my substitute using Psychic, but it's not faster. He uses his full restores here, 3 of them, which is really annoying, but this just delays the inevitable. I knock the Alakazam out, Gyarados is next. I'm using Ice Beam against it, which takes a total of 3 turns to knock it out, and I get a lucky freeze along the way, but it actually defrosts right away and still hits me with Thrash. Dewgong is left on yellow health, but all that's left is Arcanine, and while it does have extreme speed, this move isn't powerful enough to inflict critical damage. Dewgong survives on red health and knocks Arcanine out, clocking in with its first playthrough time of 1 hour 17 minutes and 59 seconds, with 6 resets, 0 blackouts at level 72, with a game time of 4 hours and 50 minutes. Alright, that's a really good time for my current tier list. Let's continue on though with the second league. To make things a little bit easier, I'm going to grab some rare candies, one on this route over on the side of the map where I never go, the other one in the Sevi Islands, in Cape Cod, as well as in Lost Cave. This area is really annoying to navigate. Essentially, every time you go through one of the doors, you go to a different location, and there is a specific combination of doors that you need in order to be able to get to the Silk Scarf as well as the rare candy. To obtain the candy, there is a total of 8 steps that you need to take, so it's east, north, south, south, east, west, southwest. The Lost Cave rare candy is one that typically I skip because it takes a decent amount of time to obtain, but I felt that having an extra level for Lorelei in the league rematches would be advantageous for Dewgong. Okay, it's time for Lorelei. Let's see how this goes. Substitute turn 1 because she has a Dewgong, and this thing loves double team in the rematches. Return is still doing a decent amount of damage. It misses a bit, things are annoying, she uses a full restore, but eventually I knock it out and move on. Piloswine is such a trash Pokemon to have as an additional Pokemon on her team, so I just one hit with Surf. Lapras is next. Now this thing knows Thunder in the rematches, which is one of the main concerns I had using Dewgong. Return is doing about a quarter, which makes things look really bad for me. I establish my substitute. Thunder just breaks it right away again. I'm gaining back some health using the leftovers, but if Thunder continuously breaks my substitute, I am not going to be able to finish her ace off. And that is exactly what happens. I run out of health, and that's that. I wish I could say that I solved this fight with some incredibly unique strategy, but in the next fight, Thunder misses enough times that I'm able to knock out her ace, and with it out of the way, the Cloyster and the Jinx aren't threats, so I'm moving on to Bruno. I think the rematch against him might be the most difficult battle in the entire game, which is really hilarious. I take some damage from the Hitmonchan as well as the Hitmonlee before moving on to the Machamp. This time, Cross Chop hits, but it doesn't do enough to knock me out. That said, Surf is not 2-hitting, so I get taken out. I get luckier in the next fight against the Machamp because Cross Chop misses, but because of a healing item, this still doesn't give me the win. And like Lorelei, I kind of cheese my way through this one. I just freeze the Machamp with Ice Beam. Due to the status condition, I'm able to take it out and knock the Steelix out with one hit from Surf. I thought that Agatha would put up a decent fight with moves like Thunderbolt on her Mischievous and Gengar, but she really doesn't. Dewgong just stomps her team with its special moves. Substitute is so good against her. And it continues being extremely useful against Lance. I block Gyarados' Thunder Waves. It's essentially stuck using this move trying to cut my speed, but it never can. With my substitute in place, I once again block Aerodactyl's Rock-type attacks and then sweep his Dragon types, moving on to his Kingdra. Now technically it only takes neutral damage from Ice Beam, and my ranges are really unfortunate, putting it on low health so that he heals, but this doesn't end up mattering because it really doesn't have very many good moves. It loves Dragon Dance, and I mean loves this move. It should really set it up once or twice then use Hyper Beam, but instead it goes for 3 turns of setup, letting Dewgong knock it out. So it has all come down to this. There's only one battle left against the champion. I'm able to establish my substitute on the Heracross because it doesn't have a fighting type move that deals direct damage. Still, it has the same type attack bonus Megahorn, which does so much, so I lose my substitute. I can re-establish it, and I was hoping it would choose either Counter or Rock Tomb. It goes for the latter in this case, which does not break my sub, giving me a chance to attack. While I don't have enough damage to 2-hit, the Heracross just kind of sits there doing nothing for a while, and eventually I knock it out after a healing item. Surf is super effective on the Tyranitar, bringing it to yellow health. It breaks my substitute using Thunderbolt and then goes down. Alright, so it's time for Venusaur, and I do not have a substitute in place, but it doesn't matter. This thing only has Solar Beam as a damage-dealing grass type move, and as a result, Ice Beam is still able to 2-shot. While the sun is annoying, I would like to use Surf on the Alakazam. Instead, I'm just going to go for Ice Beam, and then I got a serious jump scare because Psychic crits, but Dewgong survives and moves on to the Gyarados. While it sets up with Dragon Dance, I set up my substitute. Ice Beam gets a critical hit, doing more than half, and I think that actually might be what gave me the win, because Gyarados breaks my substitute on the next turn, but I have enough damage to knock it out. As a result, I move on to the Arcanine once again at yellow health. I survive on red health and knock it out with a series of Surfs. Okay, so in the second league attempt, Dewgong gets a time of 24 minutes and 56 seconds, with 3 resets at level 82. All of this is a total game time of 6 hours and 17 minutes. Alright, thanks to everyone who supports me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships. I really appreciate your support. Now let's get to ranking Dewgong in the tier lists. First of all, we're going to start with the post-game tier list. Right now, Mewtwo has the top spot, followed by Golduck and Kabutops. I've been noticing recently that water types seem quite good in the post-game, and today Dewgong follows in that trend. It's not quite as good as Omastar, earning itself the overall 5th spot, just behind the fossil Pokemon. Switching over to the standard tier list, let's rank its first league attempt. With its time of 1 hour 17 minutes and 59 seconds, Dewgong earns itself the spot behind Kabutops and ahead of Hypno in the A tier. I think it's interesting to compare Dewgong's results with Hypno's because it only had 6 resets, whereas Hypno had a total of 11. That said, Hypno's level and game time metrics were both better when compared with Dewgong's. It finished the game at level 69 with a game time of 4 hours and 35 minutes, whereas Dewgong finished the game at level 72 with a game time of 4 hours and 50 minutes. So the consistency of Dewgong and largely how intuitive it was to play because it had such limited options made it just a little bit better in a first playthrough when compared with the Psychic type. If you've been following my live streams this year in Emerald version, you'll know that I've been finding that fighting types are incredibly dominant in that game. The reason is because they have access to the move Bulk Up, which might be one of the best setup moves in the entire series, especially when the final trainer in the game relies heavily on physical attacks. This leaves me wondering how fighting types will do in FireRed and Leaf Green. Primeape in my current tier list is not a good example because I forgot to use Bulk Up when I did that playthrough, which is a major player error from me. So in the next FireRed video, I'm going to continue exploring this question further by doing runs with both Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee. Unlike in Generation 1, where Hitmonchan is completely trash, I think it has the ability to do decently well in FireRed, and Hitmonlee was a beast in Generation 1, and I think it's going to continue being a beast in this game. Those 2 videos are going to release at the end of this month, just 2 days before the beginning of daily December. Okay, that's it for this one. If you have made it this far, you are incredible. I will see you in my next video.